All right. Hello, everybody.
Hello,
Hi,
good morning.
Hi.
Morning, everyone.
Morning. I think we should start now. Yeah. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Minty. I major in business administrations, and I am in the class of 2024.
Hi, and my name is Yung. I'm majoring in electrical engineering, and I am the class of 2024.
So today, our speakers really don't need any introductions. Not only they are our most caring instructors, but also they are one of the most respectable scholars in the world. It is just to say that it is the great privilege of being Vin University students and members of the organizing teams of our first ever research bootcamp that we get to bring great minds together for a panel about research.
And we would like to welcome our beloved Professor Ray Putin, Director of Computer Science Program from the CSS College, College of Engineering and Computer Science, and Professor Huindin Jin from the College of Health Sciences, and Dr. Jenny Lei from the College of Business and Management, and of course, Dr. Jason Picard from the Faculty of Arts and Sciences. And today's event is created to provide the students with the answers to the questions such as what does research involve, what are the various types of research, and how to research effectively.
So during the discussions, if our beloved guest speakers want to add in or contribute to each other's points, or perhaps make any additional suggestions, please do. That would help us to not quite close the experience host a lot. And for the participants, please note that if you have any questions, please feel free to comment and we will select some of your questions for the discussions. Please give us our speakers the biggest virtual applause, and I believe we should get it started. So to kickstart our panel discussions, I would like to ask Professor Ray Bruntin one question. So I have learned that your research revolves around the theories and applications of machine learning, data mining, and probabilistics analysis methods, correct? And these sounds absolutely interesting and mind-blowing, yet I believe for many of us students, finding and coming up with an idea that we are truly passionate about is quite challenging, if it is not completely tough in some ways. Would you mind sharing with us how you come up with a research idea, and more importantly, how do you make it special to you in a way? Thank you.
Um, I'm sorry, Professor. It seems like we cannot hear you.
Okay. Is that all right?
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you.
All right. Okay. Sorry about that. So there are four really key angles to research that I see. There are the mathematical side where you're proving things. There's the engineering side where you're putting things together in a known way to make them work. There's the science side, which is really discovery and observation and hypothesis testing. And then finally, there's the creative side, which is sort of creating something anew and imagining. And all of those four aspects are critical. Now, in what I do, the mathematical side is there's a bit of it. And you have to have built up some of those math skills and at least understood some of the concepts. You also have to have the engineering side, which for us is programming. So you've got to be fairly good at programming already to be able to get started. So having said that, but all aspects, observation, creativity, they're all critical. So having said that, what do you do? Well, at the undergraduate level, I see one thing is you've got to be getting your core skills up, and core skills takes a while. That's just going to classes. You should be starting on your research skills, and that's going to be really literature review, right? Going into a new area, reading about it, finding out where the good literature is, and learning the tools. So there's quite a lot to do before you get to research. But in the research that I would do as an undergraduate, I would do applied research, which means maybe you're going to be working with Dung. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his name, Andrew, who spoke yesterday. You could work with him on his recommender systems. He would give you an example of some systems, and then you could be doing research on that. You could be working for the one of the public health folks, Laura or Prani, and with them doing some data analysis or visualization. So there's quite a lot of research to do, but I would say at an undergraduate stage, you need to hook yourself up with a good professor or one of the academics in a more applied area where you can be learning the research skills, but also you're not expected to know advanced mathematics at that stage. So that's what I would say. I don't know if that answers.
I think that's give us a really clear picture. However, how would you recommend a student who is interested in starting their undergraduate research and maybe be a RA to approach the faculty members or approach the researchers that they are having the research projects that they are interested in?
So,
maybe because it's quite daunting to them or something.
Yes. So another thing I should point out, as you do your subjects, you'll discover various fields that you find more interesting. I mean, I navigated naturally to natural language. Other people, there's different aspects. You might like human interfaces. You might like medical data analysis. So as you study, you should observe and see what interests you. Now, there are some nice examples in the that were presented for our faculty, our college, where they gave a few examples. I would investigate each of them and see if any of them sort of find interesting for you, because I think it was said beautifully by one of the speakers yesterday. You do need passion, right? You've got to have an interest. This can't be work. It's not a 9-to-5 job. So you've got to have an interest in it, and so see what interests you. And maybe if it doesn't, try and speak to one of your lecturers whose work you like. Try and speak to one of them. Try and get them after class and get into a discussion. I'll tell you now, I'm pretty sure every single lecturer in the faculty, including me and Laurent, who hasn't come in yet, we all love talking about our work, and we also love talking about students about their interests. So try and organise a bit of time. But we all enjoy working with or chatting with students and talking about what interests them. So approach us. There's a very broad range of interesting skills in our faculty, and you saw really interesting projects on display there. But also remember, you as an engineer or a computer scientist, you can be working with, say, the public health folks or the business folks on a project as well, if that's something where they need a certain amount of, say, programming or computer science.
Thank you. So I have learned that, and I hope other participants of today's live stream also learned that keeping a really good conversations with our lecturers is really essential in some way. So thank you for your sharing. So back at you, Anh-Dũng. Oh, sorry. If you have something more to share.
And you need to be reading. You need to be reading.
Oh, yeah, reading. Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Thank you. Back at you, and you.
Right. Thank you, Professor Ray Putin, and thank you, Thi. And to continue with our discussion, as many of you know, Professor Huindin Jin, your credential is in research, especially relating to infectious diseases, run very deep. And as you can see here, both of us are from CCS and CBM, and we are not exactly familiar with the procedure and the process of research in health sciences related fields. So we know it will be different from doing research in like business or computer science. So Professor Huindin Jin, can you walk us through the major characteristics that make doing research in health sciences itself unique? Thank you.
Sound.
Yeah, actually. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. And it's a very good opportunity for me to have a discussion with the students about the research. And you know that in health science, the research is very complicated to prepare the good and deep research for health science. So I would like to share with you the types of the researches in health science, and then some experience of myself when we did and doing the research now. Okay, let me share the screen here. Mm-hmm. So can you see that?
Not yet, Professor.
You did not see my sharing figure? Can you see the slides?
Not yet.
Oh, why? I don't know what it is. Yeah, okay, this one. And now, can you see now?
I apologize. I still cannot see your slides.
Can you see now? Can you see my sharing slides?
I'm sorry. This seems to be a technical issue.
So I actually don't think that we need the slide, professors. I think that your appearance today is already the privilege of our students. So yeah, I think your sharings would also be really valuable to all of us, even without the slides.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So in general, I would like to tell you that in in medical science, we have two main research groups: the observational studies and interventional studies. The observational studies are classified as a type of research that researchers conduct to determine the nature of things and phenomena under specific conditions of space as well as time. So the observational study have two types. Can you hear it well?
Yeah, we can hear you really clear.
So regarding the observational study, we have two types: the descriptive and analytical study. The descriptive one involve the systematic collection and presentation of data to provide a picture of a particular situation. So in descriptive studies, when performed on a population unit, we call that the correlation studies. And when we perform on individual, we have case report, we have case series studies, and cross-sectional studies. And regarding the analytical design, the analytical designs are concerned with the evolution of cause and effect relationship, and often focus on the observation and analysis of a cause and effect association. Therefore, analytical studies are often conducted after descriptive studies to test the causal hypothesis that the descriptive research has formed. In analytical observational study, there are case control studies and cohort studies. And regarding the interventional study, this is they are divided into prevention studies and clinical trial studies. The subjects were randomly divided into two groups. One group received the intervention, we call experimental or interventional group. And one group does not receive the intervention, we call control group. And the outcome of the interventional is calculated from comparing outcomes of the two groups. We know that research in medicine is considered as a practice of evidence-based medicine. And the evidence-based medicine pyramid will help, but we don't have the slide for that, but we have this kind of the pyramid for the evidence-based medicine. And we have from the lowest level experimental study until the highest one. And we have that the metadata systematic review. But at this point, because we don't have the science, so that we cannot explain better for the students to know what is the complexity of the research system in health science. But anyway, I would like to share with you one my research, such as a story, so that the student can understand how did we do our research. How did I perform my studies? So when I was in the 4th year of medical school, I had been involved in malaria research, because at that time in Vietnam, a lot of people died from malaria. And then malaria became my main research direction throughout my work at the universities and hospitals. In the fight against malaria, drug resistance is a difficult and ever-present problem. Drugs commonly used in the last century, such as quinine, chloroquine, mefloquine, doxycycline, tetracycline, and so on, have gradually become resistant to parasites. And the current strategic drug, the artemisinin, is also starting to suffer from resistance in many regions of the world, especially in Southeast Asia, and in which Vietnam, we are in Southeast Asia. And if this drug is completely resistant, we will probably be helpless against malaria, this strategy. So this has put us, the malaria researchers, to focus on our attention on the combating the drug resistance. And after years of research, we found the solution. That is the combination of artemisinin and a tyrosine kinase inhibitor. The name is imatinib. Imatinib is an anti-cancer drug, but in our experiments, so many times doing experiments, it has both. We recognize that it has both the ability to increase the effect of artemisinin and not to cause drug resistance. In our view, this is the long-term solution leading to the complete eradication of malaria. And our work has received the patents in Italy and Europe in 2019, and it is currently registered for patent in the United States and Vietnam. This is the one of the most important, and we have just published the most important paper of our team on the Journal of Experimental Medicine, which this journal has the impact factor of 14.3. Why? We know that the average rating accepted internationally for medical journal is just 3.0, but we have the impact factor. This journal is impact factor is 14.3. It's very a good journal, and that is my little story for the students to understand more about the medical research, how I can get in and how we get the result like today. And I hope this story is useful to you in your study and research. Thank you for your listening. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that your story is really, really inspiring to all of us, especially students who are considering pursue a research career, maybe. Even me, like a business student, I was like, wow, it's so amazing and all. So I have this one questions that I'm really curious to ask you. So in your journey and the stories of you that you just told, what is the aspects and the point of the journey that makes you you are like most interested in and that really you enjoy the most, basically? Thank you.
Yeah, really, you know that the malaria so far in many countries, mainly in the remote area, where the population, mainly the ethnic minorities, it's very hard for us to have the study site at that those area. When we did the study there with the clinical trial, it takes at least 4 or 5 years to uh, get the better condition for our clinical trials. But the most important is we would like to persuade the people there to participate in our research, because they don't know much about the sciences, and they just concerned about their daily life, and so that how can persuade them and how to make them have a trust in our work, and so they can collaborate with us is the most important thing. And interesting too, because after some years working with them, they consider as the citizen of that area, and so we can work with them well, and they help to come to our station, study station, to give us blood. And because it's very hard to get blood, those patients sometimes they think that we get blood so we can sell in the city. Some people can say that, and they can make misunderstand for the people there. And so, but after the 2 years or 3 years of persuading them, and so we can get the blood from the people very easily, and they are very happy because when they trust us, they can come to us anytime, and they can help us to recognize the situation of disease at any time. And so after that, we can get the result of our research very easily. But it takes time. It's from not so easily from beginning.
So it does really prove that everything, the process is always really important too. Not only the results, but also the process that makes it really special and all. Thank you very much for your sharing. May I ask if Professor B. Card is here?
Yes, I'm pulling him up right now.
You guys.
Okay, cool. Hello, Professor Jason Picard.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, so I have these questions for you. I have known you for a while, and I've also been in some of your classes and lectures, and we have talked about many aspects about Vietnamese studies, culture, history, and how it is written. So as your student, I always found your student works truly amazing and fascinating. However, somehow, I don't know why, but in our conversations, I have never asked you what research in history and maybe social sciences would be like, and especially for its methodologies, and would it follow the common formal process that we can usually see on panels and conferences, or would it be made somewhat different to others fields? And maybe can you give us a pictures of what students who are interested in doing research in these fields should be aware of before they start?
Minky, thank you so much. That's a great question. I think, especially in my field as a historian, I think oftentimes for students, and actually for most people, history is just assumed to be the memorization of dates and events and people's names. And that is so boring. Even for me, although I tend to be pretty good at memorization of dates and names and the sort, but it's so boring. And that's not what history is about. In fact, I actually really feel like Dr. Chien's talk just now was a perfect segue to what I do. Because Dr. Chien, he talked about space and time. He talked about his personal experience doing research into malaria. It made me think about, and then his work with uplanders, upland peoples. It made me think about several things. Number one, that history is a human story at its very basic fundamental discipline. It is a human story. That's number one. And the next part of this is it's stories. It's stories about you, about me, our past, about our ancestors, about events that have happened. It's not the memorization of dates. It's about themes, all of the themes that whether it's Dr. Ray discusses or Dr. Jin discusses, all of this is history. In fact, Dr. Jin told us a story of history about his own experiences, how he got into the research relating to malaria. That is history. Okay? That's the foundation. The next thing, Dr. Jin then went into the story about his experience with uplanders. This kind of contrast and conflict between cultures. In fact, if any of you are interested, there's a very famous book about this very problem in the United States that occurred in the United States about a Hmong family trying to deal with American doctors. For those of you who are interested, the name of the book is The Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down. So I was thinking about this as I listened to Dr. Jin and thinking about the work that I do, this issue of methodology. What exactly does a historian do? Well, like all other scientists, we seek to answer questions. We seek to come up with a great question. We come up with a hypothesis, and then we seek to find the answer to this. Am I right? Am I wrong? What do I need to know? What more details do I need to find in order to challenge the prevailing views or conventional views about this problem? Okay, so what? I have a question. I have an argument. Where do I go to locate these details, this information that can challenge the prevailing view? So I go to places like the archives. Archives are a kind of a warehouse of documents that may be kept by a government, a company, maybe an NGO, the United Nations, a university. Every institution in the world will have some form of an archive. So that's one place I may go. Another place I may go is a library. I might go to newspapers. I can go to anything that is a document, a novel, a book. All of these are sources. Okay? All of these are sources. Well, then the next question, though, is how do historians speak to each other? Sure, we write books, we write articles, but perhaps the most important way a historian can speak to his fellow colleagues and also speak to the public is through the footnote. Now, all of you have taken courses at this point with academic English, and you've also taken courses perhaps with me or other historians, and you know how important it is to cite and to use references. Well, to us, to historians, this is the fundamental part of writing good history. Without the footnote, I can't recreate what my colleague has already done. I need that footnote to be able to track down sources, information. But with all of that said, Ming-Thi and to the rest of you, I think for me, the most important aspect of writing history, right? I have my argument, I got my thesis, I have my sources from, the archives or from the library, the newspaper, what have you. And then I've got my footnotes. I've got this written, I'm getting ready to put together my paper. But the most important thing, let me just take you back to the very beginning, what I was talking about, is the human element, the stories. These are the things. This is the flesh. This is what makes history so much fun. It's not the facts or the figures or the dates or the names. It's the stories. And if I might, just one last story. And I think Ray really, really nailed it. When we do this, we got to have fun. We got to have passion. And about 15 years ago, my God, you guys were just young little people at that time. But about 15 years ago, I was working on my project on migration. I had just gotten started, and I had read this wonderful book by by an author who was very famous before 1975. In fact, Dr. Jian may be familiar with him. His name is Zeng Yat Mao, and sadly, he passed a few years ago. But I was searching for this man. I knew he lived in Saigon. I knew he was in Saigon, and I knew I needed to find this man in order to ask him questions that were really bothering me and that he really tackled in his work. So I searched and I searched and I searched for him. I literally spent 3 years searching for him. You guys have no idea what I did to try and locate him. I went to EVN, Vietnam's electric company, because I had a sense of where he lived, and I wanted to ask if they might have details about a person who lived in this section of town in Saigon. Of course, I went, and they were like, "You're crazy. We can't give you that kind of information." But I tried anyway. I then went to the national phone company to try and track this man down. Could not find him. 2.5 years passed. Finally, one day, a friend of mine who's an academic here in Hanoi, he gives me a very cryptic call. He says, "Jason, do you want to meet Zeng Yat Mao?" I said, "Yes." He's like, "I have his phone number for you." And I was like, "How did you get it?" He said, "Zeng Yat Mao reached out to me and said he heard that there was a young American who was searching for him. And after 2.5 years, and he had heard repeatedly that this man was still looking for him, he decided that you were worthy of having a sit down with him." So finally, in about 2008, I finally got to meet Zeng Yat Mao for the first time. And he said to me, one of the things that he really admired about me was my dogged search for him. And I think that's what we all want for you guys, a willingness to put forth your passion, right? Do the work that is required of you. But most importantly, you got to love it. You got to enjoy it. You got to have passion when you do it. It doesn't matter if my methodology requires a search through the archives, or it's it's sitting in a laboratory. This is about the love that you feel for the work that you're doing, and I think that's the thread that kind of links myself, Dr. Jian, Dr. Ray, links all of us together. Dr. Jenny as well. Forgive me, Jenny, I know you're there. It links all of us together, this love that we have for the work that we do. And that's what we want for you guys. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your sharing. So I have this one little small question. So personally, I'm really interested in social sciences, anthropologies, and history. So I really want to ask you more about what would be your favorite resources sites, maybe the archives that you just mentioned, and maybe where you find the really wonderful research papers that you are really interested in, and maybe the books and all. Yeah.
Well, I can always say, I'm a weird person. First of all, unlike many historians, I actually really love hanging out with people, which many of my friends, they prefer to be locked up in a room with just documents. I love that part of it, but I also really love people. But there is nothing more satisfying for me than walking into an archives here in Hanoi. For all of you who are curious, there's National Archives 3. It's not too far from here. It's in downtown Hanoi near the Daewoo Hotel. And it is a wonderful place. You go in and you have the smells of all this old papers that when you sit down and the documents are for you. This is the thing that gets me so excited, guys. I sit down with my documents in the archives, and they're papers that are put before me by the staff, right? And they might give me a file of maybe, 500 pages. And in it, I open up and you look at the very bottom of that page, and immediately the hair on my arm stands on end. Do you know why? Because I see the names of people like Ho Chi Minh, and I know that he signed his name there. And I know I'm touching the same paper that he once touched. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm connected to history through this piece of paper. So that's one thing that really gives me great enjoyment. In terms of resources for all of you, something that I think it is a really amazing tool is something called JSTOR. Now, we don't have full access through the university However, we can get some access through the university library, and I would urge all of you, please take a look at JSTOR. Use it a lot, guys. Use it as much as you can for your work. It connects all sorts of things, not just history, not just social sciences. You can find documents about computer sciences and engineering. You can find documents about medicine. It is a brilliant source for all of us. And I would urge all of you to use it. Actually, the more we use it, the more we'll push the university to actually get a full subscription to it, which would be awesome, by the way. So please do that. I'm noticing someone here, Ming-Thi, you mentioned Netflix, by the way, here. I actually think Netflix has brilliant documentaries. It actually has put together a brilliant collection of documentaries, and documentaries are always a great resource. Okay, so those are some ideas giving you a sense and the flavor of what I'm doing and the things I enjoy.
Thank you so much for your wonderful sharing. I have learned a lot personally. Thank you. Can we have Anh Dũng, please? Let's get back to you.
Right, thank you, Thi, and thank you very much, Professor Picard. Next up, I want to invite Professor Chin Yi Lei.
Hi everyone, good morning. So it's really lovely to meet you all today. And after hearing wonderful sharing from my colleagues, I feel a lot of pressures. They are doing great, research in various areas. So Professor Ray Brutin with all the research in computer science and how to innovate our way of living. Professor Chien's with health science research, and how to improve people's health and how to save people. So that's wonderful. And then Jason's, he did talk about like how do we look at the past and learn from history, be connected with the past. That's all wonderful research area. For me, I think I am the representative of a not very fancy research area. It's more about business and management. So our research question is always about how to improve a company's performance and how to do things better in business area. So that's a part of social science research with that we share the same foundation with Zation. And I think we could share similar research approaches and research methods with Professor Tien a little bit, but not too much. So from our business and management angle, so we look at different aspects of a company, like financials, marketing, human resource management, and we all think about how to improve it better. So my background is about marketing. So our central point of focus is to explore and understand customer behavior and how to conduct better marketing activities and campaigns that can convince customer to buy a specific products or to pay for specific services. So in order to do that, we also we have two different approaches, and that they are very similar to Professor Tien. But before conducting any research in our business and management area, we could do something very similar to what Jason is always doing. We look at all the past. So we have a literature review research. Basically, we look at all the previous studies related to the topic, and we try to understand what has been done, what do we know about this topic. So for example, if we talk about like how to use let's say like a virtual reality, right, to engage customers in a specific product and service. So we have to look at all the past research related to this topic and see how people have developed virtual reality, how they have tried to use virtual reality to engage customer. And then based on that literature review, right, so based on really good understanding of what has been done, we try to figure out what has not been done, right? and try to come up with some interesting research question. So like the question could be like why virtual reality is so engaging to customer, right? And then we try to conduct what we call the first research approach, exploratory research. So we try to find different answer to that question, and that we call exploratory research, and that could involve interviews or focus group. So we try to talk to people and understand how do they why is it happen, so why do they find virtual reality really interesting, and then move on after we have a different answer, like some people say, because it is so it provides a lot of feelings of telepresence, so you feel like you were transported to a different world, right? It's so sense simulating, right? So you can feel that environment with different senses, with hearing, with visuals, elements, and all the stuff. So then we have a different research, different possible answer to that question, right? But we are not sure which ones would be the best answer, or like the significant answer, so that you can replicate and then apply it as a theoretical guidance for all the marketing practices to do in the reality. So we do something very similar to Professor Chien, but in social, in marketing area. So we also do experimental research, right? We show people different things. We measure how they respond to the stimulus, and then by testing different stimuli, we find out like which way is the best way to engage customer in virtual reality, for example, right? And we can provide we by using all the correlation analysis, then we find out which one is the best way to do it. So very similar to the way Professor Chien is doing, but from a different angle, right? And that's what we do in marketing and business research. And currently we are actually adopting a lot of advanced research tools from medical research, like we trying to measure customer reactions using like the advanced technologies like eye tracking. So basically at WinUni we have a pair of sets of eye tracking devices which allow us to measure the customer visual attention. So we have the eye tracking glasses. So customer could put on a pair of eye tracking glasses with all the sensor around. So when they look at something, the eye tracking has a camera here. So it helps us to record where the customer is actually looking at and pay attention to and be interested in. So that's one type of the technological tool that we are trying to apply in customer behavior research. And there's a lot of more interesting thing like we measures we use skin conductance. So a small device attached to your skin, to your hand, or somewhere, so we can measure your emotional responses to a marketing stimulus like a poster, a video, which one is better. And we also have the what we call the EEG headset. So very fancy stuff, but very difficult thing too, because it has been used in medical research a lot to measure the brain waves and see how people react to different things. And now we adopt all these too in consumer behavior research, trying to understand like the automatic and like somehow intuitive reactions of customer to some marketing stimulus. So very fascinating and interesting moving of all the marketing research so far right now. All right, so I think that's provide you a taste of what we can do and what we focus on in business and management research. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Actually, I have one small question. Thi and I have actually personally went through your most recent paper, and we found that the equation model SEM really interesting. Could you share with us your methods when approaching a research topic and developing the methodology in your research? area. And I
Yeah.
am specifically curious about how those methods have changed, during this pandemic period.
Okay, so I think like if you talk to most business people and you talk about SEM, they're gonna be like, "What is it? We don't care about that." But SEM is actually a very powerful research tool in customer behavior research, because SEM is one research tool to verify the correlation between different variables. So very similar to Professor Jian, right? So when we test different stimulus to the customer, we need to check whether it's actually this stimulus create the responses for the target audience or not, right? And we use SEM to actually confirm whether the relationship is significant or not significant. So if you learn a little bit about statistics, we did talk about like if we can achieve a significant, we can verify a relationship as significant when it is less than less than 5% of the chance that it is wrong, right? And so we SEM is actually just one research tool to verify the correlations between different variables. And thank you for reading my research recent publications. I think it's not easy for young students to read them, and 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 uh, um, and for me in social science research, I did describe a three step of conducting any research. So you come up with a question, like my latest publications was about how the hotel industry has been dealing with the pandemic, right? So that's a very common research question, because you can actually feel it, like when the pandemics happen, the hotel industry is hardly hit by the pandemic, so they are struggling to survive. So the most relevant research question for all hotel managers would be, how can we go over it, right? How can we do it better, survive in this situation and be prepared for the recovery phase after this. So we come up with the research question, and then we have to look at all the literature review, look at all the pandemic or like a risk management models in the past. So we learn from the past the same way like Jason did, right? So we did look at all the past and see what has been proposed, what has been the best practices in the industry so far to dealing with crisis situations, right? And then we have a several crisis management framework. So as student, you may have learned about it, in several courses. So later, if you have a risk management course, you may learn about all the possible models of crisis management, right? And learn all the best practices in the past. But you know that most lessons could be applied in new situation, but you need a little bit of adaptation and modification, because the situation is not the same, right? The pandemic crisis is not similar to any previous natural disaster crisis before. So we need to adapt to the situation. And the way we collect data to answer for that question is to go for global news media, and we collect all the new medias that they are reporting about how the hotel industry are dealing with the pandemic. So we collect around like 300 to yeah newspaper about the hotel industry, and then we go through the data analysis process, and we put on we classify all the responses of the hotel industry in different stages of the pandemic crisis, and then figure out what have been the best practices for hotels in the industry, right? The success story in the industry, and we try to find out what are the main success factors of these hotels, and then we come up with an adapted, right, modified crisis management model. So that's how we learn from the past, adapt in the current situation, learn from the current situation, and come up with something better, a more meaningful and helpful framework for all business people to deal with the situation.
Thank you very much, Professor. That's really, really cool.
Thank you so much, professors. Actually, after Professors Jenny Lei's sharings, I really miss studying in your class in operation management because I think that the eye tracking tool would be so much powerful if we use that in our operation management, and maybe with the service blueprinting also, it would be so
Yes.
much powerful. Yeah. Thank you so much for all of your sharings. However, I have one, maybe the small questions. So all of you have mentioned how important it is to read and absorb a lot of literature review. But however, when I go through a lot of research paper, and especially in the literature review part, it always really overwhelming because there's a lot of sources and the prose and the writing in it is really there's a lot of, it's like a summary, but it's really hard to consume all of that because the name of the authors always just occur and maybe in the middle of the sentence. So is there any tips that you should you think that the students need to know when reading literature review, when researching about the topics they are interested in, and maybe note taking all of that? Thank you. I think it's open questions for all the professors.
Yeah. So I think it's could be different in different areas because in different areas there could be different requirements related to literature review. For our area like business and management, when I started my PhD, that exactly the same question I asked my supervisor because I spent like the whole year reading the literature and I feel like I haven't done enough because during that 1 year when I'm doing literature review, people keep publishing new papers, and I'm like, it's gonna be endless process. I could never ever to finish this process, right? So that's really scary. And so I came to my supervisor and he was laughing at me and he like, "Look, yes, if you want to be an expert in one area, that's what you do. You do it your whole life. But if you are a student, there is a smart way of doing it, right?" So and he recommended me, whatever research topic you want to do, there must be an expert in that area already, right? So what you need to do is just to go on Scholar Google, put on your topic, and then put review. Then read the most recent review paper written by a well-known expert in that area. And that could provide you like up to 60-70% of all the knowledge in the area, nicely grabbed up and structures and presented by a very knowledgeable person in that area. So if you do literature review in any area, try to go on go Google Scholar, put put that topic or research question in, like you put virtual reality, customer behavior in, and you put like a review, then try to find a review paper in the like last 3 years, and you would be able to find that review paper with a lot of citation. That's a good sign. It means that it's a very well-known person, it's a very well referred review paper, so you can start from there, right? And then when you read that review paper, it's already structured, so they provide you a very, if it is a very good literature review paper, it provides you an overview of the whole stream of the literature from the beginning to the current situation. So you can jump in and follow that review paper and read some relevant paper you feel like you are most interested in. And that's
But
the way for you to get quickly updated about the literature.
there is a number of styles of literature review. Some are more tutorial. Some are more just listing stuff of their peers, and they're not that informative. Some lack a depth of understanding. So sometimes the literature review is not done by people who have a deep insight, and it's more descriptive than analytic. A good literature review should be analytic. So you've got to look at the literature. Typically, you might find several literature reviews, and you have to think which one is really the one you want, and you should go through them all to find out.
Totally agree. Yeah. So I think like my supervisor did recommend that you look at the number of citation. Normally, a bigger numbers of citation is a good sign. And secondly, you look at the
Mm.
journal. So if it is published in a good journal, like I don't know whether as a student you learn about the journal ranking. You learn about it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was going to say they need a whole discussion on the whole business of journal ranking, conference ranking, difference between
Yeah.
conferences and
Yeah.
journals, the ability to detect a good paper. There are so many aspects of this, and in fact, I was going to say on the other side, writing a paper is another.
There is.
The business of writing is something you need to get practice in, because in engineering and computer science, physics and some of that as well, we all use a writing tool called LaTeX. Now, almost certainly you other folks wouldn't have heard of that. Some of the business people use LaTeX. But LaTeX is really what makes us write well, and it means that the documents we produce are actually so much better formatted than, for instance, a Word document, once you get to know it. But anyway, so that's writing skills as well as research literature skills, I think are really critical.
I'd like to add to that. I think Ray, both Jenny and Ray bring up some wonderful points. But I think, as I listen to both of them, something that strikes me is, for all of us, when we are first introduced to a new field, a new subject, you do feel a bit like you're drowning. You have so many things that you have to integrate into your knowledge scape that to this point you've probably never learned, or at least not to this degree. And it always strikes me, it's like jumping into a river. In fact, the Vietnamese have a saying, right? Nhập ra tùy tục. And the second part of that, nhập ra tùy tục, is nhập giang tùy khúc. So when you jump into the river, you got to go with the bend of the river. And I think so much of it, again, we've talked repeatedly about this, is the joy that you bring. When you bring joy to the research, when you bring joy to your reading, and you spend time, you must be patient, but over time you are going to figure out, okay, what's important, as Ray's suggesting. There's so much that is important. What's important, but then to Jenny's point, what's not important? What can I just say, you know what, I'm going to put that aside. I'm going to focus on these papers. But yes, I think when you initially get in, you have to be very careful that you don't ignore certain papers, certain research that maybe to this point is not well known, but may eventually become well known. I think one of the things that I know in my field, sometimes that we get caught up in are fads, the thing that's really hot in the moment, but we don't pay attention to the things that really matter, the things that are really important. So I would say, just drawing for what I'm talking about, patience is so important when you're overwhelmed, as you described. And I certainly respect that. I feel that sometimes too, that sense of overwhelm.
So I would like to add something about the health sciences. You know that in health sciences, every day the increasing of information in health science is too big, and every day we check on Google, it's always the decades of million of information every day, and so it's very it's not easy to get the good information in health sciences. So the first thing we should think about to get the from the reliable resources and from the reliable organizations. For example, so far we have the COVID pandemic, and we think how can we think about the vaccinations, for example, and how many months after the second shot of the vaccine we can do the third one, or so that, and we can have many kinds of information about that. And so in this case, we should choose the reliable organization or the reliable resources to follow. For example, when we can have here for the WHO, it's a very reliable, and National Institute of Health in the US, the CDC in Atlanta in the US. So that's a very reliable sources so that we can follow. And especially, and the same in the research in medical sciences also, we should choose the high rank or high impact factor journal, because in medicine, in medical research, we usually use impact factor for our review for the literature. And so we should use that. And the journal with high impact factor, which should be very good for us to follow. There is a contradiction in our health science that everything in the textbook is very, very reliable, but usually not updated. But what is updated is not so reliable. That's a contradiction. And so we have to think much about that when we get to the review the literature in our research. And so that's just some sharing. And so and now there are some people in medical field, they want to hire a person to get information for any kind of research. I think it is a smart way. They don't have much more time to do that. You can hire an expert in that region area, and they can help you if they have more the free time, and they can help you to collect the data for you to write the information review, literature review. It's a good way, and our medical students, some of our medical students can do that. It's a good for the CDBM is one kind of business now for the as such, and at the same as when we do the biostatistic, we can hire the biostatistician to do that instead of us, and we can just do research. But statistics, we can hire the first expert in biostatistics to do that. That's something I would like to share with you in about the research in our medical science. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, professors. Thank you, Professor Putin, Professor Picard, Professor Jenny, and Professor Ching. We're really grateful for the time and effort that you took to share your thoughts and experience with the student community here. And I personally believe that we can benefit from this, from the method you guys suggested, and to get started with our own undergraduate research. And many students were at a standstill in the progress, but your talk definitely provide a much needed help. Thanks again for a very memorable morning. And I'm sorry for delaying. It's running a little long, but again, thank you very much. I hope you guys can join us again. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. Wonderful.
Thank
Wonderful
you so
job,
much for
everyone.
joining us. Thank you.
job.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Now, hot stream.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for attending. And it's now for the magic code for you guys to check in and earn some experience points. And for anyone with the questions, unfortunately, because it's running a little long, I cannot do the Q&A session. But I have recorded your questions, and I will send them to the professor later. Thank you very much. And today, magic code would be super effective. All right. And remember, our next event is called What is a Research Proposal and Why is it Important for Any Research Projects at 5 p.m. today. It's a workshop, and I think it's very beneficial for you guys to complete your research proposal at the end of the week. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again.